A blaring alarm shattered the calm of the cramped conference room aboard the Stellaris, the Galactic Council's flagship. The ship's polished chrome walls quivered with nervous energy as counselors scrambled, exchanging hurried whispers and anxious glances. Cradle-sized screens flickered with images of chaos, the lush emerald forests of Iridium Prime reduced to dark ashes, the glimmering seas of Aquarax choked with a thick layer of crimson. As their vibrant worlds disintegrated in the blink of an eye, the laughing echoes of disbelief faded into heavy silence. At the head of the long cobalt table, Minara Keth, the chair of the council, straightened her cobalt blue robes. Her skin shimmered with the soft glow of a squid-like lumilon, betraying naught but calm, even as her heart raced. "This isn't just a spark in the void, fellow counselors," she urged, her golden eyes narrowing. "It's a fire, an infernal spreading across the Stratus Quadrant." "Minara, you're dramatizing," scoffed Varn Kex, a tall, thin being with something resembling scales stretched tightly over his frame. He twirled a slender finger, flicking through the floating data projections. "Just an anomaly. Every time we experience unusual stellar activity, Earth throws another tantrum." I can see that." Seated nearby, Olivia Steffens rolled her eyes. She was Earth's lone representative, a voracious researcher with frizzy hair that stood out like a beacon in the alien assembly. "Tantrum? Listen, Varn, we weren't being emotional when we sent you our findings. Those anomalies are not harmless. They're signs of what's to come." "Your Earth signs." Varn leaned back in his chair, the corners of his mouth twitching. "Then why haven't we seen evidence of your supposed catastrophe? Planets don't just burn away without a trace. We need facts, not theories." "Facts are emerging, yes," Olivia persisted, her voice steady despite the awkward shifting of counselors around her. She tapped at a holographic display, and the room brightened with colorful charts and images from Earth's satellites. "Every time there's a flare-up in Sol 3's sun, the C0 variable—" "Worrying," Varn interjected, but Olivia pressed on, undaunted. "That spike correlates with a flux in interstellar radiation. Our models predict if it continues, entire systems could be engulfed." She emphasized her last words, sweeping her hand to make it almost theatrical. "What will you do then? Send in mitigation teams only after the damage is done?" "A counselor murmured nervously as Minara raised an elegant brow. "Olivia, translate your figures for us. What are the implications for our worlds? Can your C0 variable hurt us?" "We're not looking at just fluctuations, we're observing chaos. Life cycles closing. Our sun might ripple through dimensions we can't see." The room hummed with skepticism, eyes darting away. It was not just laughter she'd endured. Years of her warnings had been met with eye rolls and sidelong glances. No one knew how to navigate humanity's frantic love affair with statistics and data, until she looked up. The planet burnings flashed on screen again, suffused in red and orange. As if summoning dark memories, pieces of each world hurtled into her mind. She stood taller, the gravity of Earth's history weighing heavily on her. "This isn't an anomaly. This is action. That's what I bring. A harbinger." Varn pinched the bridge of his nose in disbelief. An underground group on Earth claiming they're following cosmic patterns? Cannot replace science, my dear counselor. If it were true, it would be more widespread and we would be inundated with similar reports. "Sir?" Sergeant Wells spoke or thought. She searched for words. The slender counselor from Desolaris leaned in, her silver skin glinting in the light. "Why should we believe human speculation? You have no history within the Council's evolved future holdings," she snapped. "This is a waste of precious time." Gaza's menu included all available futures relative to this menu. Olivia desperately wanted to shake some sense into them. "You will regret dismissing this." Her voice, little more than a whisper, could barely keep the room from rupturing into chaos. "Every decade we've sent warnings. But now, you will see the consequences for yourselves. I can feel it in the upcoming synoptic pulse." The mood in the room shifted, flickering between credulity and disbelief. Counselors shifted uneasily, cohorts murmuring amongst themselves. Minara could feel the rising tension. a haunting truth, resonated beneath the gestures masks they wore. Minara, a low voice pierced the charge. Remick, a hulking figure from the obsidian hegemony, slid into view, large hands resting on the table like boulders. Shall we draw this session to a close? I sense a tempestuous coming, and diversion makes me study the calamity. Smiling, I agree with Remick, Minara said, feeling the weight of the moment settle. This council has indulged longer in scoffing at humanity than deciding what actions to take. Perhaps we can find a way to facilitate learning before disaster strikes. Now we let Earth's council do the dirty work? Varn scoffed again. We have protocols. Let them fail, and we stay out of the fire. The crew filled the back of the vessel to overflow. I began to sing, soundlessly to myself. Morale ebbed. The councilors, faced with their collective arrogance, now stood at the precipice of a galaxy-sized risk. Blairy, a quiet member representing the frightened Rimmelans, finally spoke up, his voice shaky yet resolute. But what if Olivia is right? Can we really afford to sit idle? I got a mic. A silence brewed in the room, its heaviness saturated with a long-existing ignorance. But the alarms resumed, a shrill reminder of what was at stake. Several screens flashed. Solar explosions hinted at immeasurable frontiers intruding their reality, with gunshots and slow-motion shots. A low hum began beneath their feet. Minara looked to Olivia, and for the first time, her voice emerged stern and unwavering. From here on in, we make our choices, solidify our fate. Agendas of despair await us, but Earth can only do so much. You believe only in the evidence presented. Then we have another 120 rotations for you to start believing. It floated to the merkable discs and appeared strangely white, a soft pink, as if the room's motion were measurable and focused. A long blue slice of light phenomena illuminated the agendas presented, while the brilliant blue skies around. The Luminon raised a hand to pause the chaos, the tension palpable. With each passing second, the disbelief flickered like faulty starship lights as the specter of unpreparedness loomed over them. As the ship rocked, a warning jolting through their seats, the councilors shifted uncomfortably. What were they to do when judgment had finally arrived? A foreboding waited, threading a delicate path toward Earth, the battleground against their overwhelming absurdity. Galactic Council convened in a hasty resolve, a shared anxiety simmering beneath their composed exteriors. With each passing second, reports streamed in. Flame-scorched vegetation haunted every projected image that flickered around the conference room. The councilors' cavalier dismissal of humanity's warnings to the universe had finally manifested in fiery reality, but the path forward remained shrouded in uncertainty. Minara Keth surveyed the uneasy faces surrounding her. Each councilor represented a unique culture and ecological history, their varied beliefs conflicting under the weight of the changes looming ahead. She cleared her throat, her voice firm but open. We must act. Despite our differences, we must unify to address this escalating threat. As murmurs of dissent and fear rippled through the assembly, Olivia Steffens seized the moment, projecting Earth's latest environmental analyses, a swirling web of interconnected disasters. The radiation spikes we've noticed aren't just localized. They're rippling across sectors. If we fail to act in sync now, we could provoke a chain reaction. The non-corporeal entities from the astro rift may enter. Non-corporeal entities? Varn's scaly face erupted in a sneer, a disdainful rejection of Earth's conjectures. More dire speculation. Enough! Remick boomed, slamming his palm flat against the table, the sound echoing like thunder. You can die from fire irony, or heed the cryptic wards. Our worlds are facing a threat. If the Council doesn't respond, cataclysm is the least of our worries. Abdul gestured to Remick. Aligning with Earth can't be our only option, suggested the silent Deceleris counselor, her silver skin gleaming ominously under the ship's lights. Extrapolating strands of data is fine, but it'll lead us to nowhere if we don't investigate the rift ourselves. Kira stood perfectly still. What are we supposed to do, send teams to the Astro Rift? Varn interjected, visibly frustrated. We're not equipped for that. No, Olivia interrupted, her voice steadier now as ideas materialized. We design a joint team. Earth, Desolaris, and your hegemony, Ramek. They can dispatch scouts to study the rift's activity, while I work on measures that might counteract these destructive forces. We have tech that no one here could fathom yet. Go. Inara studied her fellow councilors, the rift between their perceived priorities threatening to unravel any hope of collaboration. But could they overcome their deep-rooted prejudices and cooperate? We need the council's support, she insisted. What will it take for you to see the merit of Olivia's approach? We don't have long, Cookie said. I already explained my reasoning. Faith, Barnes spat. Something this council has long misplaced. Then let us prove ourselves, Olivia challenged. Give us a time window. Exactly 28 rotations before we meet again. Equip our teams with the tools we require, and we'll come back with answers. She straightened herself, a surge of confidence flooding through her. If we fail, you may dismiss us utterly, and I will accept your resentment. But if we succeed, a hushed anticipation ensued, punctuated by the ship's shuddering. It began to drift toward the rift, and a plethora of conflicting emotions surged around the table. We join the Earth and Craft Solutions, Minara declared, her tone of firm affirmation. Those are the terms. Whirling Gaza. As councilors exchanged charged glances, tension hung uneasily. All right, then, Ramek rumbled, his voice daunting with promise. I suppose we begin crafting our reports. Earth will help the Coalition of Worlds. The decision stirred an unsettling energy throughout the ship. They had no time for complacency, but the Council needed to evaluate the implications of reaching out beyond their spheres of influence, which had always been meticulously guarded. It could very well breach the discontent simmering within. Ash said, "Get the squadron ready for flight," directed a unit leader. Anyone required for the journey outstanding. 2 rotations later, amidst the contours of the endless cosmos, the Council's emissaries assembled on the carrier ship Solaris X, a nimble vessel designed for reconnaissance. Accompanying Olivia was Gian, a tech-savvy Desolarian with an ethereal glow to his streamlined shape. Ramek's directive loomed as he entered, dwarfing the rest. His angular brows stood furrowed, shadowing his piercing cobalt eyes. As they scanned the horizon, Ramek, now what? Olivia began, a slight tremor invading her voice as she pushed through the rising anxiety. She turned toward the speakers, as luminous flames already bathing the walls and ceilings sank through the thick armor. Our team's been established. We cannot delay, Ramek declared, gesturing to a viewport that revealed the astral rift, swirling colors mingling between realms like an artist's chaotic palette. A spine would quiver at the sight. Peril glimmered and beckoned. The earth temperature panted, catching his breath as the onslaught grew heavier. The cavity filled with cooling water, the water reflecting the squiggly lines on our inner. Precaution must be maintained. Phasing in and out of this rift, Jean relayed, his fingers dancing across a holographic display, more poised than Olivia had expected. Her mind raced. She had seen research. Theoretical projections had promised perilous encounters ahead, leaving irrefutable gaps in knowledge. How can we even approach this entity? Any miscalculation, a mere misstep. Captain Chen had been right. This was going to be rough and scarier than a miniature. Our main objective should be data acquisition. No one else has approached it before. John fell serious. Understand it, and perhaps we can mitigate its danger. John spoke. The operational capacity stretched across several cycles, testing their ingenuity and establishing camaraderie. As they registered phenomena, traced interactions, and gathered measurements, gradual intimacy wrapped the trio, forged within their shared mission. And your humans rely on cognitive tools? Ramek's deep voice rumbled one evening, sparks emanating from their makeshift lab aboard Solaris X. Tell me about it. Is it novelty? A rite of passage? Olivia laughed, the subtle sound betraying years of frustration. I wouldn't just view it as novelty, Ramek. It's what makes us adapt, survive. We have evolved through trials. What makes our spirit endure? He nodded slowly, his attention holding deeper than before. You are distant in your pursuits, but I respect your adaptability. I will have my hegemony design machinery to traverse this anomaly. Then it's settled, Jian said with a grin. A united design then. But it was not enjoyed with frivolity for long. Their enthusiasm nearly fractured when they nearly lost the anchor cable to an unstable surge emanating from within the rift. That split second drove them into action. They learned to look beyond prejudice, honing urgent skills shaped by collaborative risk. Position sought, Janice said. I found the sampler. Weeks passed in flashes. The rift's growing energy veiled them in sheer chaos, warmth intermingling with apprehension. Despite the effort, the stakes mounted, and the emotional toll intensified. One evening, while preparing for yet another descent into rifts unknown, Ramek turned toward Olivia, his hulking form illuminated against the backdrop of the cosmos. Does your human spirit ever fear what awaits beyond? Swallowing hard against a rush of vulnerability, Olivia met his gaze. We fear the unknown, yes, but we peer into it anyway, because only there lies the potential for change. Your kind of resilience might be what we need. Suddenly the ship jolted. An alarm clanged, deeper than mere metallic error. It reverberated through the marrow of their bones. Reports of radiation interference. Extreme jolts incoming, Jian exclaimed, fingers flying across the interface, activating emergency protocols. We must stabilize the vessel. The crashes reverberated, glasses shattered, the ship began its furious dance. Hold on. Ramek's resonant voice cut through, commanding as the vessel surged violently. Celestial bobbing pushed them each to their limits, firming under the stress of desperation. Initiate your defense mechanisms. Protect this vessel. In the driving chaos, Olivia sprang to regain control, intent on steering them against the current. Operating the myriad consoles, she hadn't anticipated how alien symbols would blend into her subconscious, each image now familiar. She drew shields from the core of the designs Jian had instructed her on, melding their biocompatible fields to reflect away impending blows from unpredictable forces. Crimson flares exploded outside, painting the space with treacherous bursts that melted away her doubts. We'll ride this out together, she shouted, heart racing. The rift's chaotic whispers clamored like a tempest. Their worlds resonated with the symphony of gravitational pressure. The ship shook fiercely, but a newfound synergy pulsed among them, threading a fragile bond that teetered on the brink of annihilation. As an eruption of energy exploded into a canopy of colors, they stood steadfast, holding hands, linking cultures, tethered by raw tenacity, transcending isolation. And in that perilous moment, Earth's warnings rang with urgency, catching the cosmic winds, fanning flames, brighter and hotter than before. But the embers had transformed into sparks, and they would forge their own future, reshaping the future once thought lost. The ship trembled violently as Olivia leaned into the pilot's console, frantically stabilizing the Solaris X in the wake of the erupting rift. Bent. Slow. Bent. Bent. Each jolt threatened to cast them into the chaotic abyss beyond. Holographic readouts rapidly flickered with data, attempting to capture the rampant solar flares and devastating waves of radiation spilling out from the dimensional void. Jian, I need that containment field up now, she barked, sweat beading on her brow as she twisted knobs and punched buttons, struggling against the unforeseen strain of the power surges that blared through the vessel. Surging. I'm working as fast as I can, Jian shouted back, his lean form darting to various consoles, narrowly avoiding falling equipment. Blue light coursed around him, a sign that he was integrating Earth's shielding protocols with Decelerarian enhancements. Recalibrating shields to counter the resonance. If we can align them with the next wave surge. Jian's voice cut through the chaos, but Ramek, ever the calm voice of authority, interrupted. Aligning is what we need. Follow her lead. What you've devised needs coherence. We're moments away from impact. Inject the distorters to harmonize with Earth frequencies. Force a repulsion. The cockpit filled with a flurry of activity. Olivia barely heard Ramek's deep voice amongst the cacophony, but his commands sank into her chest. The Terran core thrummed with energy, and realization struck. "Wait, Ramek!" she shouted suddenly, a spark of inspiration igniting in her mind. "We can do this better. Why not invert their frequencies completely? If we set the flare's energy cascades at a reverse angle while amplifying our shield, it could push the energy back into the rift instead of absorbing it." Ramek raised a brow, sensing credibility in her hurried scheme. A volatile solution, but it may be the only path left. All the power we can mobilize. Now. Exactly. Olivia grinned, emboldened by their connection forged in chaos. Let's apply our combined energies at full force. Jian, sync up the reactor with the interface comprehensively. Right. Jian's hands flew deftly, his focus finally aligning with her plan. They had to trust each other's diverse technological intuitions, pulling together knowledge spanning worlds. On 3 then, shift frequencies to a reverse cascade, Ramek intoned, his voice solid amidst the pandemonium. Empty. 2, 3. Knife fair, Rue cried. Elix followed. With their combined commands, instruments hummed to a fever pitch as light danced brightly around them. Heat at the epic center swooped toward the reactor, like a living entity responding to their rhythms. But buoyed spirits held steadfast as the ship contorted elegantly through turbulence. While outside, the rain slowly slackened to a day within day. All channels surged in unison as Olivia gripped the interfacing bars. A surge swept through the Solaris X, resonating with power as it began to reel back the energy from the rift. One last pulse roared through them. "Extremely careful of my speed," Director Rogers said. The cosmos screamed as the rift emitted tendrils of light intertwining with the maximum output the ship could generate. In that moment, Olivia felt untold possibilities surge through her, growing steadily as hope surged with it. "Now!" Ramek commanded, and her hands maneuvered elegantly over the controls, hooking into the pulse display. She pulled back and engaged. As the energy cascaded back into the rift, vicious sparks erupted, igniting galaxies of iridescence, the cosmic chaos swallowing the cabin in its first hints of calm. They clung tight as the solar storm shrieked and buckled, dissipating the energy storm. A blink of light, curving outward in a halo surrounding them. Excuse me. The rift began to shrink, contract, and collapse in on itself. For a breathless moment, silence enveloped them, dilated in a glorious zenith, then abruptly shattered as the vessel rattled violently but held firm. 3 ceiling heights on the compartment of the sanctuary, 6 orange and yellow lights, contradicted by the black thermostats, projected upward by the thermostats. "Hold on," Olivia shouted, as a tremor tossed them like rag dolls. Light enveloped their ship, bathing the control room in a myriad of colors as they surged forward through a rift closing on manipulative energy, and the depths of the unseen dark faded behind them. "I missed control," Carmen said. "Routine, of course," the driver stated curtly, all sentience and organism goosed by the fright. "Oh no," she gasped, falling to the deck for long enough to yelp to rip at her senses. With one final surge, the surrounding fabric of the cosmos erupted in whispers of color and fire like a blooming tempest, suffusing their vessel. Until quiet ensued, the rift vanishing completely. Its fiery entrancements reduced to a flickering promise of energy. It seemed, blazing as the horizon before gushing forth with warm light, reflecting the waning crescent centered in the blue. "Did we stop it?" Jian laughed incredulously as they steadied themselves and surveyed around. Olivia exhaled deeply, letting pure joy spill over her euphoric grins. "We did? We..." But before she could finish, alarm sliced through the celebratory air, blaring ominously once more. "Of course," Ramek sighed, rolling his massive eyes. "What else would today present?" "Hannah." Jian scrambled back to the consoles. "It's the planet sector's estimation of impact waves from the sun's previous distortion sequences." Screens flickered to life, revealing decay rippling across the planets, their vibrance eclipsed by shades of scorched devastation. The rim planets, once gleaming with life, now stood on the brink of collapse. "We don't have time," shouted Gian, urgency now driving every word, his voice firm. "We need to mobilize recklessly, before any surviving energy breaches have dire implications," Captain Cadbettering said. Olivia felt a pang of realization shudder at the thought that, if they had failed to convince the Council beforehand, vast repercussions could ripple through unaligned planets, overcoming them until every world lay at the same crossroads. "Let's contact the Coalition," Ramek declared, assuming command even as tensions swelled. "We'll rally across our designs and set to action with resources." This was just the beginning. Their strike team, formed quickly assembled, crisscrossing layers of communication, alliance building with every sentient being willing to work alongside. They set to repairing lost homes, radiant brilliance of shared light descending into utter darkness made for harsh learning lessons. "We initiate a defensive grid of protection across the sectors," Chion summarized, collaborating models in tandem with both inherent observations and decoded strategies from Earth. "Stability must be maintained." At that point, everything burned with shared process and progress. The team's resolve brimmed steady and firm, their creative mechanisms adaptations to unprecedented strife, paving new pathways. Well, good speech, dude. Days turned into weeks as they sought the Council's assistance, and declarations trickled through channels, insisting on the desperate connection that was radiating from beyond the stars. The power dynamics of negotiation and understanding transformed their very perspectives. Meetings evolved from simple assessments to shared experiences marked by intense honesty. Such was the nature of kingships. In a pervasively shifting culture, life turned out to be simpler than many thought it would be. Minara Keth stepped to the forefront, her spirit enveloped as she actively uneasy shared the earlier council laughter with the stakes amassed on the horizon. "We erred in oversight. Never would we disregard your insights. It was arrogance that clouded our vision. What exists now is a need for a shift that enables collaborative survival." "I agree," Varn chimed, his scaly visage softened by a new sincerity. "We should craft an intergalactic coalition grounded on our shared crises. Constructive engagement should stem from adaptable practices, foreseeing future hurdles instead of belittling them." Gradually, laughter turned to understanding. Alex's warnings, once rendered as cosmic thrall, emerged to reshape culture. Ancient superiority narratives found foundations of compassion, something deeper underpinning the various species that once felt divided through endless eons. Every being sought reparative justice, addressing ecological disaster that stemmed from the journey's folly. When the Council witnessed their worlds grow richer through newfound kinship, they reframed their reality, channeling new data exchanges across the vast cosmic expanse. Months later, as they paged through the tapestries of what had unfolded, they set forth signaling transmissions across the interstellar lands, positioning biospheres vital to a larger harmonious cycle. Smith paused and glared at the two displays. As the Council gathered for its next assembly, the air buzzed with anticipation. Minara and Ramek, now unprecedented allies, shared perspectives over the long glass table. Their laughter was like harmonic melodies, reframing the space brought alive through the union forged by risk. "Squeege, squeege, squeege. Perhaps we can learn a thing or two from you after all, Olivia." Minara smiled, acknowledging the once ridiculed Earth's resolute sparks that ignited a twilight before them. "I believe we all bear the scars of humility," Ramek noted with a nod. "We now understand. New alliances born must always hold a vital pulse to carry us forward." And they walked back to their ships. The space between squadrons blew open, and Ramek took the remainder of his suit off. In those radiant chambers of sparkling cosmic energy sat declarations being designed for not only unity of survival, but undying reignition toward a nurturing cosmos. As voices intermingled across the storied hall of evolution, gratitude lingered in the air and reframed the radiant existence from the epicenter of their calamities. Within those collective strides, faith burned. Newly birthed ideals forged out of ashes, reminding every last being present that laughter can turn to wisdom once roots plant deep. A chorus anchored in promise across the infinite reaches of discovery and learning. Aspire to evolve, unite, and push further, the galaxies beckoned, promising brighter tomorrows. Through tenacity and folly, Earth's caution shone through a resplendent light and tendered future, showcasing nobility and spirit forged within the flames of existence. Lady Flowertine paused,